What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I'm making a video today. The topic, well, Dolphins, obviously, but it's going to be a bit of a fan Q&A today. I have some questions that I want to answer. Kyle Wright had sent in some questions on some of my videos. I told him I was going to answer his questions, and so I'm getting to them now. I've told you guys I do enjoy interacting with you, and I hope you do leave me questions and comments, and then I can answer them for you, whether it be specific videos, Q&A videos, or just, you know, along with other videos. I do enjoy answering them. So let's go ahead and get right to it. He asked me a bunch of things. So first, he wanted to know if the Dolphins will win a Super Bowl by the end of the decade. He notes that that's a tough question to answer, and it is, obviously, because I am not a prophet, I am not an oracle, I don't have the gift of sight, and therefore I am incapable of telling you what's going to happen within the next 10 years to any real degree of certainty. So, at least in this regard. So, I don't know. That's the short answer, but I will say this. Look, from my perspective, to the degree to which the Dolphins have decided to take their efforts, right, their philosophies and so on and so forth, right? Again, to this day, people will argue over whether they tanked or not. They did. It's inarguable. They implemented the basic philosophies of doing it. But regardless, their practices have been, you know, a bit extreme. Their methods have been a bit extreme for the NFL, right? No, they certainly tanked last year. They were garbage last year. They jettisoned their entire roster pretty much, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Accumulated all that draft capital and cap space, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, and then they went all in on their quarterback, all that stuff. So they went full in, full bore. And look, either they get it right or they don't. If they get it right, okay, we'll start there. If they get it right, if the Dolphins prove that these decisions that they made were smart, if they prove that they didn't reach for guys like Austin Jackson and Noah Igbinoghene and, you know, the long snapper, I forgot his name off the top of my head, in 6th round, and a couple other guys as well. You know, I'm not the only person that thinks a few of these guys were reaches, especially at their positions. I'm not the only person that thinks that they could have managed it, the draft differently. Now, most of the mainstream articles and stuff that I read tend to be on the side of, man, they killed it and they're doing fucking great, etc., etc., etc. Okay, well, we'll have to see. They have to prove it, but if they get it right, then yes, I do think the answer is that they could win a Super Bowl within the next decade. Obviously, that's 10 years. You got to give them time to build something. They need time to get chemistry and continue drafting and so on and so forth. I mean, if I'm being honest, I don't think so, because I don't think it's going to work. Their first draft under this regime was underwhelming, to be as nice as I can be about it. It was not very good for their first year. Again, to be fair, it was only their first year, and they can go on to improve, although a couple of the guys aren't even on the roster anymore. They got released or whatever last season and are now on other teams. So, you know, even if those guys go off to have good careers, it doesn't help the Dolphins. So it's still a loss. And it still detracts from their draft class, right? Because they don't have those guys anymore. And this draft has tons of concerns. Not to mention, I personally have tons of concerns with how they blew through their cap space. I think they're going to be setting themselves up for, you know, really tough decisions down the road. But that's also if things turn out the way that they hope, right? Because if they actually hit on these picks, then you know, they're going to have like Tua and ideally, you know, like Austin Jackson and Christian Wilkins and at least some of these first round guys that they're going to want to sign to big extensions, or maybe even some of these other guys that come in and that were free agents and perform, right? So maybe Shaq Lawson or Emmanuel Ogbah, they do great and then maybe they get an extension, even though they've already got multi-year deals that are overpaying them, but you never know, right? So look, I don't think so. I don't think it's going to happen because I think it's going to fall apart. I don't, especially with a lot of the outside things going on, like the pandemic and stuff and how that's affected things. I don't see it, man. It doesn't fit together. The pieces to me don't add up. And so the reason why the answer to me on this question is no is because I believe that ultimately what's going to end up happening is if there's a season to even be played this year, they're not going to get any better statistically or in the win column than they were last year. They could even potentially regress in those areas. And then, I believe that after approximately 3 to 3.5 years of this regime's time, Stephen Ross is going to fire them and move on and hit the reset button yet again because he doesn't know how to make proper football decisions. He's impatient, he's impulsive, and he's not good at it. So anyway, I know that was a really long-winded way of saying it, but look, there is a couple outcomes. If they get this right, that's a big if. If they get this right, their last draft, this draft, next year's draft, and the year after that, if they get those drafts right, if they prove to do the right things in free agency, and they do legitimately build a team, and people, a bunch of these guys that have injury histories from like this draft, for example, if they stay healthy, especially Tua, then yes, they have the potential. I've said this on multiple occasions now, especially when it comes to this draft class. But with the Dolphins team overall, there is a ton of boom potential, a ton of it. There is also a ton of bust potential. And so if they boom, sure, absolutely they could win or get to and win a Super Bowl within the next decade. If they bust, absolutely not, because then it's going to set us back far too many years, because then we'll have to go another couple years of mediocrity or shit, and then Stephen Ross will get tired of it. He'll cut bait, even though he'll say, all these wonderful things. We appreciate his time here and blah, 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 but it just was time to move on. And then we're going to have to give the next regime, a few years to see if they can get it right. And then if they don't, well, then we're going to be pretty much at the fucking decade mark by then. So, it's make or break for them. They have to get it right. Otherwise, they will not be sniffing a Super Bowl title or a division title for years to come still. All right, now, moving on to his next question. What are the biggest holes on the team that the Dolphins need to fill before the season starts? So there's a couple things there. I mean, I'll try and get through this quick. As you guys know, obviously, I would have done the draft differently. I would have taken the 2 top offensive linemen with our first 2 first-round picks. I would have taken the top safety in the draft with Xavier McKinney with our 3rd first-round pick instead of that corner. I would have taken J.K. Dobbins, the top running back, with our first second-round pick. And then I would have taken, I think it was Jacob Eason in the 3rd round, got picked in the 4th round, and Jake Fromm got picked in the 5th round. I would have taken one of them in the later rounds, or maybe even in round 3 if I was feeling froggy, right? So I would have done things way differently. So having said that, I think safety is still a big area of need. I think that's a huge question mark. I don't think playing Bobby McCain there is smart at all. And honestly, my bet is with the way his season ended last year, if they continue to play him at safety, he's just going to yet again get injured and miss time because the safety spot is, he's just not suited for it. He's just not. So it is what it is. And we saw that with, Rashad Jones, though. They're willing to do it and, whatever. Rashad Jones certainly, I think, was a far better safety than, but to be fair to Bobby McCain, he never really played it. He's a great slot corner. He's just not a safety. He doesn't really have the prototypical build, nor does he really have the skill set and stuff. So it's problematic. That's one area. The offensive line to me is still a major question mark. Quarterback is a question mark because I don't think Josh Rosen's the dude. Ryan Fitzpatrick will likely start, but Tua's probably going to come in at some point in the year. I can't imagine they're going to go the entire season without having Tua play at all if there's a season. And then, you know, what do we got after that, right? So, but even Tua though, his injury history is massively concerning to me, massively, especially because I don't believe that this offensive line is going to play anywhere near where we hope they do. And I emphasize hope because I as well hope that they do. I just don't see it fitting together. Running back is still a little bit of a question mark, not as much. It was still a pretty big question mark until they traded for Breida. I do like that move. But again, instead of like doing that and the Jordan Howard stuff, I would have taken J.K. Dobbins, you know, in the second round. Anyway, whatever. Other than that, and then the defensive line, pass rusher. So, in particular, right? So I don't know. You know, where's our pass rush going to come from? Yes, we have Emmanuel Ogbah, Shaq Lawson, and Kyle Van Noy, who none of which have ever had a double-digit sack season, and all of which were helped out by guys around them, right? Like Shaq Lawson. And I'm not saying these guys aren't talented. I'm not saying they don't have potential or upside still. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just giving you the facts. They played in systems like Shaq Lawson played in a system that was really good. The Bills had a great defense, and he had tons of other guys around him that were at least equally as talented, but still couldn't even get to double-digit sacks ever. Now, I know there's plenty of mouths to go around there, plenty of mouths to feed, but if he was really that good, then he would have outshined his, you know, good teammates. If he was better than them, generally speaking, right, then he would have gotten the bulk of the statistics, or at least pushed higher than he did, right? And so, you know, all of those guys were like, you know, 5, 6, 7 sack kind of guys, which is great and could certainly up our number at the end of the season. But if we go from 23 to 27, 28, well, it's really not much of an improvement. So I would say safety, pass rusher, offensive line, and quarterback and running back are really still big areas of concern and question for me. His next question is when will Belichick retire? I don't know. I don't know. I would say probably in the next couple years. I will say, though, that without Brady, look, I mean, the Bill Belichick, or the Patriots dynasty is in part a lot of things. As much as I hate to give these guys credit, they deserve it, right? Robert Kraft, I think in a lot of ways is a despicable guy outside of football. But when it comes to football, he's certainly well, frankly, as a matter of fact, even when it comes to football, because they're all cheaters. Belichick, Brady, and Kraft are all fucking cheaters. And I firmly believe that. So there is that. Having said that, though, they have done a lot of things right as well. Belichick, he is, as much as I hate to admit it, one of the greatest football minds and one of the greatest football coaches to ever exist. He's not better than Shula, but he is one of the greatest ever. Same for Brady, right? He's a GOAT. And I use him as an example often because when it comes to the quarterback talk in general, because my philosophy is never take a quarterback in rounds 1 or 2 ever, but always take a quarterback in round 3 or later, depending on how bad you feel you need one. And Tom Brady is an example of a quarterback from way back in the fucking draft that became one of the greatest ever, right? And then there's the conversation about how, you know, I guarantee the list of quarterbacks that came from either the first or second round that were supposed to be, especially first round guys that were supposed to be franchise changing guys, the list that includes guys that ended up being busts or just average is probably 1,000 times longer. That might be a bit of an exaggeration, but probably not by much. Maybe 100 times longer than the list of first round guys that became true franchise guys or greatest of all times or, you know, elite quarterbacks that could just elevate the entire team and take the game on his shoulders and win no matter what. Even though that's still not even the case, because even the greatest of the greatest still had great receivers to throw to and still had good offensive lines to protect them and running games to take the pressure off them when necessary. Sure, do they have some special characteristics and traits and skills? And sure, are they better than the average quarterback? Yes, but they still need help. They're not 11 guys in and of themselves, and they need other players too. Anyway, how well is the Dolphins roster compared to last year? Well, that's a pretty simple question to answer. On paper, they have substantially improved the roster when it comes to talent. They are still a very inexperienced team, still very young. So they're going to come along. So, this roster is still going to have those same issues from last year. In fact, even a lot of the guys that they brought in last year that were, potentially pieces to carry over are gone. So a lot of the guys that had familiarity from last year are gone, right? So, and then there's pretty much an entirely new coaching staff. There's going to be new schemes. So there's still going to be a lot of those same issues from last year. But on paper, theoretically speaking, they should be significantly better, at the very least, talent-wise, than they were last year. Now, is that going to translate? Again, we have to wait and see. All right, his next question, and this might be his last one. I think it might be. Yes, this is his last question. He asked me a few, but they're good questions, and I'm sure everybody does want answers to these. So if the Dolphins were to redshirt Tua for the year, which quarterback should they pick to play? It's not Rosen. Look, like I said, I'm consistent about this. I think Josh Rosen still could be a solid quarterback. Look, at this point, I think that he's been given the worst set of cards that any young quarterback could really be given when coming into the league, with his first year, in Arizona, last year with us, and now. So I think that, every day that goes by, every year that goes by, he gets closer and closer to being a bust and then just ending up out of the league. And at this point too, because of his first 2 years, he has, he was not given a situation in which he was able to improve upon his flaws, but in fact, did not really improve upon those flaws, and also developed some additional bad habits and flaws because of, getting used to being on the run all the time for his life in Arizona and the short time that he had here, etc., etc. So when he played. So it's not Rosen. It's unquestionably going to be Fitzpatrick. Obviously, if they were to redshirt him. Honestly, if there is a season, I would say that that's what they absolutely should do. They should not play Tua at all. However, I find it inconceivable, especially over a full season, if that's the case, that Tua is not going to enter the game at all. But it would be Fitzpatrick. That is the answer to the question, and we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Yeah, so with that about wraps it up. There was a bunch of questions, so that video went a little longer than I was hoping, but there was a lot of good stuff there, and it was kind of building up. It's my fault. I should have got to it sooner, but it is what it is, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope that answers all of your questions and answers them adequately. Again, make sure you put your questions and comments in there, and I will do my best to, get them in videos, but I will, if not, I make sure to always answer your questions in the comment section, provided it's not like, a troll or a spammer trying to sell me something, or, people just getting in there to just be dicks. Like, if you're going to be disrespectful, and if you're an illogical, irrational person that doesn't care about facts and data, we can't have a conversation. So otherwise, you're welcome, and I do my best to make sure to get to everybody. So please do, and obviously I answer your questions in videos. And with that, I'm going to get out of here. I hope you guys enjoy my videos in perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.